Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to create your very own informational multi-layer puzzle using Adobe Illustrator, and we'll be setting it up for the laser cutter and engraver. There's a couple things that we need to understand with this particular project. The first being how to set our layers in Adobe Illustrator, so I'll be showing you how to do that. Your puzzle must convey information from a class you're currently enrolled in. It doesn't have to be an engineering class. It can be about the Earth's layers. It can be about the different animal classes and genes. What this puzzle is trying to convey is up to you, as long as it's information from a class that you are currently enrolled in. When I'm talking about a multi-layer puzzle, I'm talking about a very simple puzzle, right? Like my Simple Machines puzzle. And you can see how it's set up in Adobe Illustrator so that we have all of these layers that are overlapping with each other. But when we set it up in the laser engraver, we are going to layer in a way. So like the bottom of this puzzle is like the pictures of the Simple Machines. The layer in the middle is like the name of each Simple Machine. And then the top is like the overall category of the Simple Machines. And you can arrange it in any way that you like, as far as like shapes, everything like that. So let's hop into Adobe Illustrator and I will show you how to get started. So in Adobe Illustrator, you are going to have a new file button. It might say create new, it might say new file, something like that. Now the idea of this project is that the puzzle can be 4 inches max. So when you go to Adobe Illustrator and click on new file, you should see some kind of settings right here that will ask you how big you want to make your artboard. Now by default, you might be in points. I heavily recommend changing that to inches. The biggest this thing can be is 4 inches, so let's set it a little bit bigger by making it 5 by 5. Now, if you're using my laptops, the create button down here is going to be cut off from the window. And so you actually have to like grab the window and slide it up and press that create button. Or if you just press the enter key, then that should create the project as well. Now, most of you guys should be fairly familiar with Adobe Illustrator at this point. If you're new to Adobe Illustrator, I'll just kind of give you a quick little tour of Adobe Illustrator. On our left-hand side, these are like the items that we can bring in to Adobe Illustrator. And on our right-hand side are the properties. These are things that we can use to edit our files. So if I bring in a square, I'm just left-clicking and dragging and bringing in a square right here. We can see that our fill is currently white. We could set that to any color, but if you are setting this up for the laser engraver, I actually recommend having your fill as none. We can also set up our stroke. And so our stroke is like the outline. I recommend keeping this at black just because that's going to work best with the laser engraver. Now we can choose our stroke size. So we can choose to make this square, the outline, to be 14 points or 10 points, whatever. But we need to set this thing up so it can cut. So what I would recommend doing for our shape is changing the sizes right here. Now right now my square is about 3 inches by 3 inches. Let's bump that up to 4 inches by 4 inches. So let's just pretend that this is going to be the outline of my puzzle. In order for the laser engraver, laser cutter to know where we are cutting and engraving, we have to set the stroke here to 0.001. If your lines are set to 0.001, the laser engraver will then cut along these edges. So if this is going to be the very bottom of my puzzle, we'll just leave it there. And we'll just keep things at as far as theming goes, let's keep things at the Simple Machines type of theme, and we'll just add the Simple Machines here. So to bring in pictures, you may either try and draw it yourself using the pen tool if you want, but I will allow you to copy and paste images that you find on the internet on your puzzle for this particular assignment. So if you open up Google Chrome here, and let's just look up a picture of a lever. I would try to stick to black and white actually for this assignment. So I would say black and white lever, and see what shows up. Find a picture that looks good to you, something that you identify with. We'll just stick with this like basic teeter-totter. So I'll click on here, right click and go to copy image. So we're going to copy that image, and then in our Adobe Illustrator file, I'm going to press Control V and paste that file. You may want to scale things down. So with your basic selection tool, you can click on these handles, and if you hold Shift, then you will maintain that aspect ratio. If you don't hold Shift, then you can make it like really stretch out and squash. So you probably don't want that. You probably want it to be the same aspect ratio. So we're just going to set that up here. Let's just bring in like one more thing. Let's just bring in black and white screw. Okay, so we have our screw here. We're going to copy this image, bring it back to Adobe Illustrator, Control V to paste, and then let's just bring this down here. Now, if I was doing this whole project, then I would bring in all 6 simple machines, but I want to explain how layers work. So over here in this tab, you might not have been introduced to this tab yet. It's called the Layers tab, and you'll notice that I have a Layer 1. If I click on this drop-down menu, we have our objects inside this layer. So when I'm talking about layers, I think of like what's on the bottom, what's on the top, how all of that is organized. And I'm going to, it looks like my window is kind of cutting off a little bit here, so I'm going to try and organize this, set this up so you can see the bottom. Now down here at the bottom, there's a little plus button. Bring it up a little bit more. There's a little plus button right here that says create new layer. If you click on that, then it makes a second layer. So for organizational purposes, let's just call this one base. And this layer 2, let's just call this middle. Now, you'll notice these little eyeballs next to it. We can go ahead and toggle off these eyeballs to turn off the visibility. It might help you to just have the eyeball on one layer at a time so you can see it. So I want my middle base to be the same size. I still want it to be this outside cut, but then I'm going to layer on top of this base layer, and I'm going to cut in spaces so I can show what the lever is and what the screw is. So what I'm actually going to do is, using the selection tool on our base, I'm going to select this outside layer and copy it. Control C. So now I have a copy of this, so then I'll toggle off, I'll click in this middle layer, and when I press Control V, now I have something for my middle layer. So I'm going to place this middle layer like right over the top of my base layer. So when I turn off the base, I still have this in the middle. If I turn off the visibility for the middle, then it all goes away. So hopefully that makes sense. Basically, the idea is I just copied this cut line where we'll be cutting that, and now it's in the middle. So I can kind of see, depending on what you have selected in terms of layers, is what you are drawing on, what you're manipulating on. So right now I'm on the base. I want to click on the middle, and I am going to now cut 2 puzzle pieces, one over my lever, one over my screw. This time, instead of a square, let's make these inside pieces a polygon. So I'm now going to go back into now that I have the middle layer selected, I'm going to go back to my properties and draw a little puzzle piece over my lever. So line it up there. You can see that it's still set to 0.001, so it still will cut. So on the second layer, when I turn this off, it's going to cut around here, and it's going to cut this additional little puzzle piece. I also would like to, let's turn back on the visibility, I would like to label this puzzle piece. So if I make sure you're in the middle layer, and then if you go to the text tool, we can just type it over the top of this. Let's just type in lever. And for your text tool, you can change the font, you can change the size, how spread apart it is, everything like that. And then I'm just going to layer it on top of this puzzle piece. So again, when I turn off the visibility of the base lever, of the base layer, you can see my middle layer is going to cut. It's going to cut here, and it's going to engrave on this puzzle piece lever. When I turn off the visibility for the middle layer and the base layer, this is what the bottom's going to look like. This is what the second layer is going to look like. So let's go ahead and make one more puzzle piece for the screw as well. I'm just going to draw another object here. Now, this is interesting. It had a fill, but the stroke was 0. So you may have to go back and change that to none, change the stroke to black, and make sure that it is at 0.001 if you want this thing to cut. Okay, so I will go ahead and place it over here where we want it to be. And let's just add text that says screw. You may just want to, just to be sure, make sure that you're working in the correct layer here. Make sure that you have everything placed in the correct layer. But now we have our middle layer and our base layer. So you can kind of start seeing how these things are lining on top of each other. One last thing that I would change as you are making additions is I would just make like a little finger hole. It's going to be difficult for you to take out this puzzle piece if you don't have like a little edge cut into this thing. So what you could do is you could just grab the selection tool, the pen selection tool, and to make curves, you click on one point to make an anchor, and then move it to where you want it to go the other spot, and left click and hold, and then you'll get these handles that you can make these little arcs, these little divots. Again, it did that thing where it automatically filled with black and then the stroke was nothing, so we'll have to set that up, 0.001. And then if you want to scale this thing down, I would use the direct selection tool right here. So the direct selection tool allows you to double click on anchor points, move them around. It allows you to click on these handles, set them up, and then you can set that up exactly where you want it to be. And I would scale it down and place it about right here. So if I zoom in, you can kind of see it's going to cut along here for this puzzle piece, and then it's going to give me just like a tiny little divot for me to be able to stick my finger in and pull this puzzle piece out. Let's go ahead and copy this, Control C, and then I will go back to the screw here and Control V to paste that. Excuse me. Nope, we don't want that. We want to make a copy of this. Control C, Control V, there we go. Now, I may want to rotate any objects. To rotate objects, if you just move your mouse on the edge here, and you can rotate this thing around, and then let's place this finger hole where we want this to be. There we go. So my second layer, I now have the puzzle pieces along with the finger holes where we'll cut it, and then this outside edge. Let's go ahead and add a third layer to this thing. So I'm going to go back to my layers tab here, click on this create new layer, and we'll just call this top. Okay, again, I want to copy this outline, so I'm going to select this outline, Control C. Now I'm going to go into my top layer and Control V to paste that, line it up where we want it to be, and then let's turn off the visibility for the middle layer. So then this is just the top. Now I want to create, this time let's create like a circle. Okay, we'll make a circle, and we're just going to cut this out along with the circle, and you can always edit the sizes, anything like that. So if it's too big, you can scale it down, set it up where you want it to be. And let's go ahead and add big text right here that says Simple Machine. So I'm going to add a text box and say Simple Machines. Of course, with the properties, you can always like increase the size here. If you want to make it bigger, you got to have it selected. Make it bigger. Okay, if you want to like center it, you can press this align center button and line up this edge where you want it to be. Okay, so you'll notice I have my top. If I turn off the visibility, I have my middle. If I turn off visibility, I then turn on my base. So when I turn them all on, you can kind of see how they're going to be layered on top of each other. Now, one of the problems that I'm noticing is I want my second layer, my middle layer, and my base layer to be inside this circle. Because if I cut here and remove this puzzle piece, I won't be able to move these puzzle pieces because they extend beyond that first layer. So I can already see that I'm going to have to bring in, let me turn off the top and the base. Let's bring in these objects a little bit closer so they're inside that top layer's puzzle piece. So now when I take off this top layer, this top puzzle piece, I still will have access to these. And then of course on your base layer, you're going to want to grab these images and make sure they're inside this puzzle piece for the middle layer. Now you can do multiple layers if you want. It doesn't have to just be 3. You could go 4, 5, 6, just depending on like what kind of puzzle you're making, how complex you want to make it. That's up to you. As far as like your actual requirements go, we are looking for a base of 3 layers. So if we go back to our Canvas assignment page, your puzzle must have 3 layers. It must convey information from a class you're enrolled in. To cut, the stroke size needs to be set to 0.001. You'll want to create finger holes for your puzzle pieces. Puzzle can be 4 inches max. You are allowed to copy and paste images, and then you're going to submit here as an AI file ready to be engraved and cut. Now you will be able to choose what kind of materials you use. I have a ton of different colors of acrylic, or we can cut it in wood if you want. That's up to you. But to turn this in, you are going to open up Illustrator, File, Save As, save on your computer, and then call it the file that you want. I would just say your first name, last name, puzzle, or something like that. Hit save, and then you are going to go in here and submit that file that you had saved. Okay, so I hope that made sense. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me and I can help you out. Otherwise, good luck.